inshallah. Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أبي نستعين نحمد ونصلي ونسلم على رسول الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So Alhamdulillah, we were essentially engaged in the discussion of those actions which are prohibited and forbidden upon a person. Mention that the state of ihram is the combination between clothing of ihram and the intention to go into the state of ihram for the purpose of either performing Umrah or Hajj. So, inshallah, alhamdulillah, I trust everybody enjoyed the Eid, mashallah. So then, the things that are prohibited are divided into different categories. So, the various categories are as mentioned on here, on the screen. Forbidden acts that are sins and harm other people. Prohibited acts that relates to the body. Then prohibitions regarding the clothing that a person may wear, and the prohibitions relating to hunting, because if a person must bear in mind, in those days they had to travel. So the kind of traveling that they had in those is not the same as with us. So when they had to travel, they also needed to eat. And therefore there were certain things that were not allowed to them to engage in with regards to hunting animals, not so much because they were in the state of ihram, but also because of precincts of the haram. So one is the state of ihram, and then also being within the precincts of the haram, and then other also being within the precincts of the haram, and then other prohibitions relating to the haram area in particular. So prohibitions that are sins and harm other people, we did mention this previously also, and this is actually addressed in the Quran itself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advises us that whoever undertakes the Hajj, it relates to Hajj, but it also extends to Umrah. That فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّ, so whoever undertakes, and he makes fard upon himself to undertake the journey of Hajj, فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. La rafath, lewdness, jidal, and fusuq. So rafath, it is forbidden to the person that is in the state of ihram to engage in sexual relations or to do actions which might lead up to sexual relations or cohabiting, such as kissing and physical contact with the spouse. Or anything that will cause, arousal, the arousal of sexual desires within the person should abstain from this. Why? Because as we mentioned right from the beginning also when we were speaking about the ihram, you have made yourself holy. You are now in a state of holiness, and it is therefore considered that a person's inclination to the fulfillment of carnal desires, it is inconsistent with the state of holiness and sanctity that you've put yourself in. And so if one concludes a marriage contract while being in the state of ihram, then such a marriage contract will be considered null and void. Will be considered null and void. You'd have to get married over again. And fusuq means disobeying Allah Ta'ala by performing any forbidden act. So although certain actions are forbidden at all times, because lying is forbidden at all times, stealing is forbidden at all times, so there's certain things which are forbidden at all times. The prohibition against them is all the more emphatic during the time of Hajj. In other words, it is considered out of the state of ihram and out of the engagement in Umrah and Hajj. Those things are already prohibited, and they are worse. It is an even worse offense to engage in those actions while the person is in the state of ihram. And then jidal, which basically means arguments. So it is forbidden to be argumentative and contentious with companions, servants, or others. Even now in the state of Ramadan, when we were fasting, one of the ulama, he made a very beautiful, statement. He said that if you consider that Ramadan refers to imsak, The technical meaning of sawm is imsak. And imsak means to exercise self-restraint, which means that amsik ala nafsik, hold onto something or restrain something to yourself. So in this way, my act of worship as yourself. Act of worship as yourself. When we are fasting, nobody knows who's fasting and who's not fasting. So it's a very individualistic ibadah. But when it comes to Umrah and Hajj, there's one Kaaba and there's 1 million people. So all of those people are engaged in those rituals at the same time, at the same place. So it is only bound that when you have a big amount of people in a confined and specified place, that to some extent those people are going to come into conflict with one another. There's going to be tensions amongst them. Because the mere fact that you have to walk together in that one place, there's bound to be some pushing, some shoving. You're going to be bound to cross each other's path. You're going to get in each other's way. So how then to deal with this? It is very easy for the person to want to claim what he perceives to be his right under those circumstances. I'm walking here, I'm not bothering anybody. Somebody else knocks into me, my right would be to claim my space. I'm walking, somebody crosses in front of me, my right would be to claim my space. At the same time, that person is experiencing the same circumstance. That person, he's not necessarily bumping into you because he wants to bump into you. He's bumping into you because somebody else is bumping into him. So there's a chain reaction. That person does not necessarily want to cross your path, but he's crossing your path in order to get out of the way for somebody else. So in all of those conflicts, we find that people can become argumentative because each one would want to claim his right. Each one would want to preserve his space. So as a result of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically mentions when it comes to Hajj, la jidal. Don't get involved into arguments. You understand? Because the quickest thing to do, and now what happens? Arguments, because both parties regard themselves to be innocent. Now when two innocent people argue, you can't stop the argument. Then it's starting as two innocent people arguing, eventually they end up both becoming guilty. Because somewhere along the line, somebody is going to cross the line. So like in the fast in the month of Ramadan, when we do find those kind of, conflicting scenarios, and we do find that there is a conflict or there is a possibility for a conflict, then what we are encouraged to do, to remind ourselves, first of all, and the other person, inni sa'im. I'm fasting. Try to avoid that confrontation. The same when a person is in a state of ihram. We should always be conscious that we are in the state of ihram. So if there is any possibility, if somebody is pushing into me, I try to be accommodating. And if the person continues, then we can have a certain degree of resistance so as to safeguard ourselves also, but try to minimize the conflict. Try to, what they call in English, de-escalation. Because normally when there's any degree of conflict or any degree of disagreement, then what will happen? There will be an escalation. Tempers flare. Voices are raised. And then once the voices are raised, then after that, the hands get involved. Because, when they say if you want a Muslim person to keep his mouth shut, just tie his hands behind his back, because we can't speak without our hands. You understand? This is our nature. When we speak, we are always animated. Now the problem is, if that animation becomes fueled by anger, that animation becomes fueled, by something else, then what can happen? It can have many negative results. So therefore we are encouraged to not allow disagreements or scenarios to escalate. Rather, we should work towards de-escalation. And how do we work towards the de-escalation? We preserve our tongue. So many hadith of the Prophet that relates to the tongue. And the general Arabic, expression regarding the tongue is, jirmuhu saghirun wa jurmuhu kabirun. that the tongue, its size is very small, but its damage is very great. And very often you might find yourself getting involved in an argument, and then when things have cooled down, you go to the hotel and you're relaxing a bit, then you say to yourself, "Yeah, that was actually onnodig." You understand? So better to try and avoid those things and not get involved in any arguments. Then the next category of prohibitions are those prohibitions that relate to the human body. What you are not allowed to do in a state of ihram. Now remember that all of these things only apply whilst you are in the state of ihram. So if, for example, you have donned the clothing of ihram, I've put on my ihram clothing, but I've not yet entered the state of ihram, in that I've not yet made my intention either to perform Hajj or Umrah, then all of these things are still permissible, because you will find that some of these things are sunnah. You will find that when we had the discussion earlier, when we were deciding what to do before you go into the state of ihram, you find that many of these things are the things that you are encouraged to do before going into the state of ihram. But those very same things become prohibited once you are in the state of ihram. So you must draw a distinction. And again, the state of ihram is not necessarily related to the clothing of ihram. No, I know I might be overemphasizing this, but this is where very often people, they make the mistake. You understand? And they become confused regarding this particular matter. So, for example, to having the hair or the beard cut for men, you understand? Or trimming the mustache, which is all part of pruning. You want to make yourself look presentable, pruning yourself. Now, this is encouraged before you go into the state of ihram. But once you've entered the state of ihram, your body is now become holy. Your hair is holy. Your beard is holy. And also, how some ulama explain it is that if you were to cut any part of it, it means that a lesser amount of you is actually engaged in the ibadah. Whereas if you leave the beard, you before you go into the state of ihram, you trim your beard, etc. And now you go into the state of ihram, then whatever there is of you, you've made that holy, you've sanctified it, it's untouchable. So now all of that is actually, engaged in your ibadah of Umrah, so it actually increases your reward. Actually increases your reward. I know a person, may Allah Ta'ala reward him, that he has a haircut once a year. He has a haircut once a year when he goes for Umrah. Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed him. He goes for Umrah annually. So then when he goes and he comes out of Ihram, then he cuts his hair. And then he shaves it off completely. But from that occasion, until he comes again for Umrah, he allows his hair to grow. That is why at the time of his coming for Umrah, you'll find his hair to be long, you'll find his beard to be long. And then after the Umrah, he goes for grooming. The hair gets cut, the beard gets trimmed. And why is this? Because he wants more of him to be in the ibadah, so that he gets more reward. And Allah knows best. I think it's something not commendable, admirable. I think it's something, because if I say commendable, you understand? So it is something admirable, because it indicates that we generally are very particular about our appearance in public. Whereas he keeps himself neat, no doubt. His hair might be long, but he keeps it neat. His beard might be long, and hy het 'n baard wat kom toe die sê borsvol. You understand? But he keeps it neat. But he allows it to grow, and then when he comes out of ihram, he shaves his head bald, he makes the khalq. I mean, now imagine who generally having long hair within one shot just have it all taken off by shaving. Generally, people who have the long hair, they don't go for khalq, they go for taksir. They'll have the hair shortened. But he goes for bald. And generally the people who have the long beards, they don't shorten the beard. He doesn't make it like short, but the qab, first length, etc. And then he trims it and he keeps it neat. But his thinking is what I say is admirable, because he's thinking in terms of the reward. May Allah Ta'ala, continue to preserve him. May Allah Ta'ala grant him great rewards. So remember that these things become prohibited once you're in the state of ihram. Then removing hair from the body by shaving, cutting or plucking. Anywhere on the body, you've got hair on your body, you take a blade, you shave it, sinful. You take a scissor, you cut it, sinful. You pull it out, sinful. Why? Because that hair has been made holy. It is sanctified now. Trimming one's fingernails and toenails. So that is why all of these things are encouraged for us to do before going into ihram. And the reality is that in most instances, for us, when we do Umrah and Hajj in the modern era, we are generally in ihram for 2-3 days maximum. If it is on Umrah, perhaps 2 days, from the one day into the next day. If it is for Hajj, it will be the 8th, the 9th, and the morning of the 10th, depending on when they do the slaughtering. It might be the evening of the 10th. But generally, we are at most in ihram 2 to 3 days. So it is in our era, not such a cumbersome exercise to be in ihram. Especially for the ladies, it's not because they're in the same clothing as they normally wear. For the men, it might be a bit uncomfortable in the beginning. But I can tell you this much, you so quickly become used to that ihram, and everybody else is wearing it. It would have been a different case. You're now the only person there, you're the only guy there with the 2 pieces of cloth, and everybody else is wearing normal clothing. So that would make you feel uncomfortable. But everybody is wearing like that. So actually, if you're not dressed like that, you're the odd one out. You understand? So for you to then be in that state of ihram, it becomes so normal that nobody in Makkah or in Arafah and Mina and Muzdalifah, seeing a person in ihram, a male for example, thinks anything funny of it. Nobody. Why? Because that is the norm. And this is something that, we become accustomed to, so we don't feel uncomfortable. The only thing that becomes challenging for us is observing these prohibitions. So using perfume such as musk, for example, on one's clothing or your body. Or carrying perfume or perfume-like fragrances with the aim of smelling it. So a person perspires, so you sweat, which is natural, nobody can avoid that. But before you went into ihram, you could put on underarm, you could put on your perfume, and as I say, it's only for a short period of time. And if it is such that you are a person that, you sweat profusely, you can go into a shower. Nothing prohibits you from taking a shower. You go into the shower, you can either put on the same ihram or you can put on another ihram, because you continue to be in the state of ihram. So it is not such that just because we are prohibited from wearing perfume or carrying perfume with us, because now we say, okay, I can't put it on my body, I can't put it on my clothing, but I can wear it on my person, and then the fragrance will be around me, so that will sort of mask the bokrik. You understand? Because now, after some time, you start, it's Ricky Lekani. But that is a natural fragrance. It is said that we've been so over indoctrinated with regards to bodily odor that most people today don't even know what a human being naturally smells like. Because the children, even from small already, They want to wear underarms and they want to wear perfumes. They don't even know what a human being smells like. And yet, speak under correction, scientifically it has been indicated that the most attractive smell between genders is actually a natural smell. It is actually a natural smell. Why? Because that is the smell which is our default position. You know, in the animal kingdom, male and female animals become attracted to one another through scent. Through scent. And as ourselves, even though we are an advanced species of animal, so to say, but we also have some animalistic qualities. So as human beings, we also have a natural scent. And scientifically has been indicated that that natural scent of the human being is actually what, between males and females, is found to be the most attractive. But we mask that, and we've been so indoctrinated, you know, by Coco Chanel and Yardley and Brut and allemaal die ander plekke en allemaal die ander mense, that we think that that is an unnatural smell. And we think it is an undesirable smell. Whereas in reality, that is the natural state of a human being. So it is not something that a person needs to feel ashamed of. So in ihram, we don't have to be overly. Sometimes you find some people, their bodily odor is much more stronger than others. Sometimes you find like that. You understand? But in the performance of Umrah, whilst doing tawaf or doing sa'i, you might come across a person who might have a stronger than normal bodily odor. But it's not like that is what the entire place smells like, or that is what everybody smells like. So we don't need to become overly excited and concerned if we find that ek het nou nie meer hy steek oudrek op my nie. You understand? Ek reik nou 'n bietjie meer na natural. You understand? So we don't need to become overexcited about that. So now, because we become concerned about that, now people try to make schemes. And one of the things, you know, which is becoming also very prevalent amongst people is that we try to find ways and means to circumvent the ahkam. You understand? So now, you know, I can't put it on my body, I can't put it on my clothes. So what I'll do, I'll wear a pouch. And then the attar will be in the pouch. I'll soak some cotton wool in perfume, and then I'll wear that with me, so that where I go, this fragrance will go. And this is how people try to circumvent. But why are you wearing that? You are wearing that in order for either yourself or others to smell the perfume. And this is not what Allah Ta'ala wants, because Allah Ta'ala don't want us in adornment. Allah Ta'ala wants us to come submissive. Allah Ta'ala wants us to come humble. You understand? And so to say that we strip ourselves of all forms of beautification. We strip ourselves of all forms of beautification and we come humbly in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So also applying kuhul with perfume to the eyes. If a person got a medical condition for his eyes and he needs to wear, you know what kuhul is? That stuff that the people put in the eyes. Now this is not the mascara that the ladies put on. It is also not the eye pencil that the ladies put on. This is something different. This comes in a tube, it's like powdery form. And you put it inside, it normally burns the eyes because it's used as a means to clean the eyes. But at the same time, it also has an effect where it does leave a dark mark underneath the eyes, so it looks almost like eye pencil. It looks almost like eye pencil. But eye pencil and eyeliner for the purpose of beautifying the eyes, that is prohibited. That is prohibited. Kuhul is generally used in the eyes for medicinal purposes, and not actually for adornment. So dyeing the hair or the beard or the mustache for the purpose of adornment. Alright? And then putting on hair gel, and for women to wear lipstick and nail polish, all prohibited. Because we are not encouraged to adorn. Understand? We must come in our most plainest basic form in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then also it is considered makruh for a woman to use henna while she is in a state of ihram, and that if she is in a waiting period, following the death of her husband, she is forbidden entirely from using it. In other words, henna that the ladies normally wear on their hands and their feet, when in a state of ihram, this is discouraged. And if that lady is in a state of iddah, this is actually a separate ruling, but it was included in here to mention it. Now, because if the lady is in iddah, this refers now to the lady, she's on journey and her husband passes away with her. Not the lady who was at home and her husband passed away and she's in iddah, because if the lady is in iddah at home, then she's not allowed to travel. But this refers to the lady who is in iddah while she is on Hajj or Umrah. Then she is allowed, she can just go to perform a tawaf, to do her sa'i, and then she goes back to her hotel. So she does, or the lady is in iddah, then she goes with some other ladies, if it is days of Hajj. On the last, she goes to Arafah, then she goes for the pelting, etc. She just the basic rituals, and after that, she confines herself again to the hotel or to the accommodation. Now, such a lady, it is completely prohibited for her. In fact, that is prohibited for her when she is at home also. If a lady is at home and her husband passes away, or she is in iddah from the talaq, then such a lady is not allowed to adorn herself. There was a famous incident in the time of the Prophet ﷺ where a lady, she was pregnant. And just before she gave birth, her husband went out in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he got martyred. Which means that she was now under iddah of the mutawaffiya an, of the lady who is the widow of a person who passed away. Now the normal iddah period for such a lady is 4 months and 10 days. However, if the lady is pregnant, then how long is her iddah? Until she gives birth. So this lady, I think it was about 2 months after her husband passed away, she gave birth. She gave birth. And then after that, she was in her nifas, and immediately after the nifas, she adorned herself by putting on this henna onto her hands, etc. But it was still within the 4 months and 10-day period. So her male relatives came and they objected. And then she went to the Prophet ﷺ to explain. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, in her case, it is permissible for her. Why? Because her iddah expired when she gave birth. So as long as the lady is in iddah, perfumes and the henna, etc. of adornment, these are all prohibited to her. But after that, she can adorn herself again. So prohibitions related to clothing and the kind of clothes that we are allowed to wear. So wearing dyed and perfumed clothing. In other words, we are not encouraged. Perfume, we know from the previous discussion we had just now, is not allowed on the clothing. Dyed clothing means that the clothing in its original form was white, and then whilst we are in the state of ihram, we dye it a different color. That is not allowed. If you got, because nowadays you find many people, they also wear, a different, often with groups. It is sunnah to have white ihram, for the men in particular. The ladies, there's no prescribed color. But if the ihram, if the material that the man takes for his ihram, as it is in its, original state, so to say, is not white, or rather say, it's not white, then that person is allowed to wear that ihram. However, if the ihram is white, then he's not allowed to change the color whilst he's in a state of ihram. Do you understand the difference? If you buy it and it's green, you can wear it green, no problem. If you buy it white and you put it on white, after that you cannot dye it until you come out of ihram. And the same with the perfume. And for the men to wear stitched clothing. Now what is stitched clothing? It means any form of clothing that is made in accordance with the shape of the body. You see this kurta, it has got sleeves in accordance with the shape of my arms. And then it has got, the body in accordance with the shape of my body. And then I've got the pants in accordance with the shape of my legs. That is what is referred to as stitched clothing. That is what is referred to as stitched clothing. So, if for example you find that there is a piece of what we refer to as the ihram, and on the sides, in order to avoid, that frills at the end, it is stitched. That is not what is referred to as stitched clothing. So it is not every kind of stitching on the ihram for the men. This doesn't apply because the ladies, their ihram will be according to their body shape because they wear normal clothing. But for the men, if for example, you've got your piece of cloth and then at the edges, it has got a border stitched around it, that is not what is meant by the prohibition of stitched clothing. As long as it remains two pieces, even if it has got a stitched border and it remains two pieces that you wrap around you, then that falls within the permissible rulings of ihram. But if you take that piece of ihram, you wrap it around your body and then you have it stitched in accordance with the shape of your body, then at that moment in time you violate the requirements of the ihram. Or I take the ihram, I tie it around me and I have it stitched so that it remains in that state. I cannot just undo it. In other words, it is now stitched, for example, the one side, and I put my head through, and then I put my arms underneath. So this ihram can't open at all. Ihram can't open at all. So under those circumstances, I have violated the rulings of the ihram. What many people do nowadays, they put on the ihram and then they tie an ihram belt around it. Now, wearing the ihram belt does not violate the rulings of the ihram because the ihram itself remains the one piece of cloth. The same with the top, people will take a big pin. Amper a neppigat stick now. And they take a big pin, they will put it across them and then they will pin it on the one side. Now, to remove the pin is easy. And because it is with ease that the pin can be removed, that also does not constitute a violation of the requirements of the ihram. However, if it is stitched clothes, so that you can't open that piece again, like you take the normal piece of, sometimes we normally tie it like we would tie a lungi. The what they wrap around at the bottom. Now, if it is wrapped around and then stitched, or if it is stitched before that time and then you put it on and you pull it up, then that violates the rulings of the ihram. Okay, then for men covering part or the entire head. That's why in the state of ihram, you are not allowed to wear a fez. Head must be open. And sometimes people, I saw in Hajj especially, when it is very warm, you get those small umbrellas that people put on their heads. Then the people put that onto their head so there can be a small umbrella so that shade them from that is a violation of ihram. Because you've got something attached to your head that covers your head. Whether it is directly on top of the head, whether it is above the head, but the strap goes around the head. It goes around the head. So that constitutes a violation of the ihram. You can't also take the clothing of the ihram and have part of it hang over your head because you are covering your head. That constitutes a violation of the ihram. I see nowadays people, since they brought in the prohibition for people to go onto the mataf, except in the state of ihram, then there's two things I see people are doing now. Because the question is, if you are in the state of ihram, or you're wearing the clothing of ihram, it is considered you are in the state of ihram. So the people wear the clothing of ihram in order to go onto the mataf, because they only allow men onto the mataf when they are wearing the ihram. But the problem is, if you die there, then you will not be given ghusl. You will not be given a ghusl. And only your janazah salah will be made, and you'll be buried with your head open, only in that clothing of the ihram. In other words, you won't be given the normal kafan. So this being a concern for the people, so what they do, they want to circumvent the one thing, and it leads to another problem. That's why I say don't try to circumvent the Sharia. Because you try to circumvent the one thing, it leads to another problem. Because now you put on the clothing of ihram, you go down to the mataf, but if you die there, then what happens? You for example, you go into to sa'i, you're busy making sa'i, get a heart attack. Now people come and say, oh, die boeta is in ihram, okay, ons niet vir hom te ghusl nie, begrawe hom sommer net so, en dan vat hulle sommer straight op next vloer toe, maak janaza salah, baratu. So now what the people do, they either wear underwear, or I see the new thing is that they wear a kufiya. They wear a topi. And then they do their tawaf wearing a kufiya, or they do their sa'i wearing kufiya. So as to indicate, I'm wearing the clothing of ihram, but I'm not actually in a state of ihram. Understand how people try to, and Allah knows best. Allah knows best. You understand? So sometimes if it's hot, you can you can carry an umbrella if you're outside and it's hot, but you can have nothing on your actual head. The head must be open. And so once you've gone into that state of ihram, and very often we have to remind the brothers, you understand, that once they go into the state of ihram, they say, brother, you must take off your kufiya. You can't wear your kufiya. You understand? Okay, so number 4, for men, wearing something which extends all the way around, part or all of one's body, such as a shirt, a trouser, a turban, or a jubbah. But this refers to, mentioned about the stitched clothing. Because the ihram itself also goes all around your body, but this refers to something around the body on the shape of the body, as I've mentioned before, about the stitched. So the number 2 and number 4 basically goes hand in hand. You can't wear something that fits according to the shape of the body, like a shirt, which has got the 2 arms, the trouser with the 2 legs, a turban, because it goes all around the head. Because the turban and the kufiya, the covering of the head, that goes hand in hand. So you can't wear a turban on the head, or a jubba, which is a cloak. Women should not cover their hands and faces. Women should not cover there, because there's in fact in the Kitab of Imam Bukhari, there's a specific chapter that deals with وَلَا تَلْبَسُوا الْمَرْأَةَ وَلَا تَنْتَقِبُ الْمَرْأَةَ وَلَا تَلْبَسُوا الْقَفَزَةَ. That a lady will not wear niqab, nor will she wear gloves. She will not wear niqab, nor will she wear gloves. Now, the mafhum mukhalaf of this is then that if the lady should not wear niqab in ihram, what does that mean out of ihram? She's wearing niqab. If the lady should not wear gloves in ihram, what does it mean out of ihram? That she wears gloves. Now, the question is, those ladies that wears the niqab and that wears the gloves, what should they do when they go into the ihram? Now, what people are doing now to try and circumvent that they say, what is the niqab? And they say the niqab is a piece of cloth that is put over the face. So then they say, but now, okay, that piece of cloth is against the face. What happens if the piece of cloth is not against the face? Does that still count as niqab? Does it still count as niqab? Okay, what is a glove? A glove is we all know a glove because it's something that the hand fits into. Now, okay, what if I don't have something that I put my hand into, but I've got something that hangs over the hands? That's why you will find lots of ladies nowadays when they come for the Umrah and the Hajj, when they do tawaf inside in haram, then they will wear the pea cap. A pea cap with a big rim. A big rim. And then there's a piece of cloth hanging from it in the front. So that piece of cloth is not touching the face. So some ulama say that will then not constitute a violation of the ihram because it is not against the face. Other ladies will find that they don't wear the gloves and they'll have an extra piece. They'll have the clothing, and you'll find this a lot with the Malaysian ladies. Because because for us, the touching of the skin on skin breaks the wudu. So what they do is they've got their normal clothing, and then sometimes they've got like an extra flap. They can either put it up or they can put it down. So when they go into the mataf for tawaf and sa'i, then they put the flap down. So for the most part, on the outer side of their hands are covered. Their hands are concealed. Wallahu a'lam. Because we know that what does the Sharia tell us? The hands and the face must be open. So the hands and the face is open, because this all relates again to the principle of, the breaking of the wudu, on the perspective of the touching of the hands, and on the perspective of the face, because women also still believe that degree of piety that existed in those years when women could remove their niqab or not the hijab is what comes around the head, etc. When they could remove their niqab and not fear, any fitna from men. They believe that era is not to be found anymore. That nowadays, even in the state of ihram, the men are promiscuous and the men are bothering the women folk. You understand? So some ladies nowadays, even still in the state of ihram on the mataf, don't feel comfortable in the midst of the men. And also with the pushing and the shoving and all of that, it makes them all the more uncomfortable. Which is why generally my recommendation is a lady should not go for Hajj or Umrah without her husband. And if they do tawaf and sa'i, the husband should have his wife in front of him with his hands on her shoulders, so that he is able to direct her and is able to protect her. Because if your wife walks next to you, jy gaan nog dink as jou vrou se hand wat sy vashou, in die meantime is dit 'n ander boeta se hand wat sy vashou. Understand? You think it's your wife, meantime is 'n boeta wat jy nie eens ken nie, en hy gaan ook nie vir jou sê nie. Understand? You can expect anything nowadays. Ya salam. Right, though? So that's why they say, and I mentioned here, they should not cover their hands and faces. It is permissible for them to cover their hands and their faces, to cover themselves against strangers. So, for example, you are not on the mataf, but you're in the state of ihram. You are traveling. So what you can do, you can lower your head and you can pull something over you. You can pull your scarf, you can lower your scarf so that your face is not visible. But your face is not covered in terms of something on the face. Same, you can take your hands, you have like a small shawl or something with you, you've got the scarf with you, you can put your hands underneath your scarf, you can put your hands, so you can hide it as long as it is not covered by something that is attached to it. In other words, the niqab and gloves. But to have something over it doesn't mean that, jy moet 'n hande in die lig sit, almal kan sien jou hande is oop nie. No, it doesn't mean that. It's permissible for them then to cover their hands and their face as from strangers, provided it is not by wearing something. However, the face cover should be like a veil which hangs before her face but does not touch the face. As I mentioned with the P cap, it hangs in front. It's like a curtain in front of the face, but it is not like normally they tie it around the head and it is against the face. So it can't be like that. That will constitute a violation of the requirements of the clothing for ihram. The men also are prohibited from wearing regular shoes unless they are unable to find any sandals to wear, in which case they are permitted to wear regular shoes after cutting them out under the upper rim. It is recommended to wear open top shoes like sandals if it is possible, because according to the Shafi'i madhab, the top part of the foot from the ankle and the top part of the foot should be open. So the heel, the ankle and the top part of the foot should be open. It should be open unless there is a medical reason for you not to do so. That does not mean that you must make tawaf and sa'i barefoot. Because sometimes people are under the impression, like generally here by us we've got carpets. Now in the time of the Prophet ﷺ they made salah with their shoes on. Because their masjid was essentially sand. It was essentially sand. So people are sometimes under the misunderstanding that you must be barefoot when making salah. It's not the case. I can remember a few years ago, there was a janaza, and the janaza salah, at that time it was very rare for the janaza salah not to be performed in the masjid. I'm speaking about probably 20 plus years ago now. So there was a janaza, but due to time constraints at the maqbara, they didn't come to the masjid for the janazas, they went directly to the maqbara. Then the person who was going to lead the janaza salah, he requested because there was at the Maqbarah, it was on a piece of sand that we were going to make the Janazah Salah. So he requested for the ulama to come to the front. So the ulama all went to the front. And then he was observing the ulama to see whether or not they were taking off their shoes for the Janazah Salah. And when he saw that none of the ulama took off their shoes, he said to the people, you can keep on your shoes for the Janazah Salah. Because the general understanding of our people is that you must make Salah barefoot. And you can't wear shoes in making Salah. No, that's not the case. As long as there is no najasa on your shoes, you are allowed to make Salah in your shoes. However, in the masjid, we take off the shoes. Why? For the purpose of cleaning the carpets. It is because of we're not taking off shoes because of the Salah. We're taking off shoes because of the carpet. Because if everybody had to come into the masjid wearing their shoes, there might not be najasa on it, but there will be sand on it, there can be thorns in it, there can be various things which will then stick to the carpet. And then to keep the carpets clean and the masjid clean overall would become a problem. So for this reason, the starting point is that it is not required to remove your shoes for Salah. In the same way, it is not required for you to remove your shoes for the purpose of tawaf inside. You can wear your shoes. In fact, it is becoming all the more common for people to actually wear their shoes on the mataf. The Prophet ﷺ made tawaf on his camel. So besides the companions wearing shoes, the only reason why people have now traditionally, moved to making the tawaf and the sa'i barefoot is because we associated with our etiquette for the masjids back home. So we understand there also, and we regard it even more holier. So we believe it is more deserving, and we regard it to be more humble from our own selves and more purifying in relation to the haram where we are making the tawaf. However, it is not a necessity for you to be barefoot. In the current scenario, considering what happened to one of our own local musallis here in Bonteheuwel, he made tawaf barefoot. And he had a little crack, a heel crack. Die Muslim man se voete, die hakke. Ja. Ek het eers 'n mooi hakke gehad, mooi voete, tot ek gegaan het vir Hajj, het dit nooit weer reggekom nie. Het nooit weer reggekom na daai nie. You understand? Then you get the cracked heels and the dry heels and all of this. My kinders het dit al getreat het van die regkom hier, subhanallah. I think that is probably part of it's part of what Allah blesses you with. As a man baie salam maak, kry jy 'n salah call, en as 'n man gaan vir Hajj en Umrah, kry jy Hajj en Umrah hakke. Daai so dit werk. You understand? Kry jy Hajj en Umrah hakke. But this person had a slight crack in his heel, and he picked up an infection, and as a result of it, I think a viral infection or something, whatever it was, it ate the meat of his foot to such an extent. I saw the pictures myself when they had it to clean off whatever was contaminating his foot. You could literally see the bones in his feet. You could see the bones in his feet. And when he was hospitalized, he was in a ward where all of the people in that ward had the same problem, and all of them picked it up where? On the mataf. So that is why in where we are finding ourselves currently, it is perhaps better for people rather to make tawaf wearing shoes. Because the reality also is that, in fact, the report is that as much, they try to clean the haram as much as possible. It is disinfected all the time. But there is still the possibility. Now, it is not guaranteed, if you are going to make tawaf with your shoes, that you could not pick up an infection of some sort. There's no such guarantee. However, we are encouraged ihtiyatan, as a precaution. So generally the ladies, they will wear socks, and they will wear, sometimes ladies wear tackies, but they will wear a comfortable shoe. But they will generally have on socks, whereas the men would be bare feet. And in most instances, they're not wearing any shoes also to do the tawaf and the sa'i when they're on the mataf and the masa. However, the recommendation nowadays would be for the men, you're going to be barefoot, but at least wear shoes, so that you have some degree of protection between yourself and the surface area of the mataf and the masa. Now, what they're referring to here is if a person doesn't have sandals, no, you have the open foot sandals. So if you then don't find sandals and you have to wear a shoe, then you know what we call the tongue of the shoe. The tongue of the shoe has to be removed. Now you can either cut it off, or alternatively you have to ensure that if you don't cut it off, it has to be open all the time. Because the top part of the foot, so in other words, you would wear your shoe, so you see the trap je hakke af, you understand? You put it in as if it is a sandal. So the back part of the shoe will not be covering the heel. You'll be putting your foot inside on top of the back part of the heel, and then the tongue area of the shoe, that has to be raised up so that the top part of this bone of the foot has to be exposed. The top part of the foot, the ankle and the heel has to be exposed. There's one brother, some people were finding it, that hy man het 'n baie expensive tekkies aangehet. And then it so happened he forgot his sandals and he was wearing his tekkies. And he had no choice. He had to cut it. Hy was baie hartseer, maar wat kan hy nou maak? Okay. The next prohibition that we will be dealing with is the prohibition of hunting. Right? It is forbidden both in and outside the haram area to hunt, kill or slaughter game animals, whether it is edible or not. Alright? So if the person in the state of ihram, you see that they speak about game animals. It is not any kind of animals. It is forbidden in and outside the haram to hunt, to kill or slaughter game animals. Now what are game animals? That's what we will call free range, wild animals. However, if you carry, as you're traveling, you've got some sheep with you, you've got some goats with you, you've got some chickens with you, because you know you're going to be traveling for a few days, you carry them with you. In those days, they'd be carrying them alive. They didn't have cooler facilities like we have today in frozen, etc. They didn't have that. So they would carry them alive. Those are domesticated animals. Domesticated animals to be slaughtered for you for the purpose of food whilst you are on the journey of Hajj or Umrah, no problem. It is the wild animals that we are prohibited, except Sayyidul Bahr, except for fish. Except for fish. Sayyidul Bahr means the animals in the sea. Because in those days, you did not find domesticated fish. You understand? Like we have today, we've got the fish tank at home, and you've got the fish farming, where they've got huge farms, where they've got big, tanks in which they breed the fish. Those days, whatever fish there was, came from the sea, or it came from the rivers. So there was no prohibition to hunting fish. Why? Because fish does not require slaughtering. All the other animals, it requires some form of killing by way of either slaughtering it or shooting it with an arrow or throwing it with a spear. Whereas fish, you don't need that. Once you take it out of the water, it dies naturally. And when it comes to the sea, Nabi Sallam has said, the water of the sea is clean for you for the purpose of tahara. And the animals of the sea, the maita, the animals that dies naturally in the sea, that remains permissible for you. Like if an animal, a land animal, dies naturally, a sheep falls down dead. We come there, we can't eat it. We can't eat it. The only time we can eat a land animal is if we've slaughtered it. If you come there, you find this animal has fallen over, hy lewe nog, hy skop 'n bietjie, but he's not going to make it, then you slaughter him, you can eat him, no problem. But once he's dead and you haven't slaughtered him, you can't eat him. Fish is not like that. If you sail on the water and there you see a nice kabeljau floating past you, he's dead, you can take him, you can eat him. The maita of the sea is permissible for us to eat. Not like the maita of the land. Because fish generally don't require slaughtering for the purpose of becoming permissible and halal for us to eat. So any game animal, whether you can normally eat it or not, doesn't matter. You understand? It's not permissible. So in other words, you can't say, look, the wild, the buck, for example, is similar to the goats. So if you, in ihram, out of ihram, you shoot the buck, you slaughter him, you can eat him. In ihram, you can't do that. But you can't say, okay, that's buck for eating, I understand, but I can shoot a lion. No, you can't. Because it doesn't matter whether you are able to eat the animal or not eat the animal. Any wild animal in the haram, you are not allowed to hunt, whether in or outside the haram. Then there was an interesting case that happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. In those days, people would travel in caravans. So, Nabi Sallam and his companions, they came for Umrah. Then there was a number of traders that also came with him. So they saw, I think it was a camel or something, but it was a wild camel. Which means this falls under game. It doesn't belong to anyone. It was there in the jungle, in the desert. So they saw this animal, and then this person said to some of the companions, hey, catch that thing. Catch it. So they said, no, we are in ihram. We're not allowed to hunt. So another guy came, and he took his spear, and he threw it. And he injured it, he caught it, he slaughtered it. And then he prepared food with it. So now the companions who were in the state of ihram, they were invited to eat the meat, to join in the food. Because he made a huge, het 100 liter pot akni gemaakt. So he invited everybody to come and eat. So they said, no, we can't eat this because we are in ihram and this was a hunted animal. It was a game animal. So he said, no man, eat it, that's alright. Julle het mos self gehunt het. Ek het mos gehunt. Julle sê julle nie, ek het dit gehunt. So they said, no, we can't. So one of them said, look, because hy is nou 'n bietjie honger gewees. Can we ask the Prophet, man, just in case? Just in case he says, we can eat it. So they went to the Prophet, they explained this is what happened. There was a wild animal. The animal was within our reach, and then we tried to, somebody told us to catch it, we said no. Then another guy came with his spear, he threw the animal, he struck the animal, he went to the animal, he slaughtered it, and now they've made food with it. Are we allowed to eat this food because we are in the state of ihram? The Nabi Sallam's question was, the person who hunted the animal, is he also in a state of ihram? And the answer was, no. Because he was traveling with, but he was a trader. He wasn't in ihram for Umrah. He was a trader. So the Nabi Sallam said, if he is not in the state of ihram, then that food is permissible for you. So it depends on who has caught the animal and killed it. If the person who caught and killed the animal is also in ihram, it is because in the first place it was impermissible for him to hunt it because he was in the state of ihram. So therefore it become impermissible for those who are in ihram also to eat it. But if the person who caught and killed the animal is not in ihram, then the food is permissible for him, and it also by that implication becomes permissible for those who are in ihram. So to kon hulle lekker akni idai aan, alhamdulillah. Right though? So according to Imam Shafi rahimahullah, hunting aquatic game, referring to the sea animals, nor slaughtering domesticated animals like chicken or lamb are forbidden to the pilgrim in the state of ihram. So as I mentioned, if it is domesticated according to Shafi madhab, then we are allowed to slaughter it and eat it. In the case of the game animal, we are not allowed to hunt it, we are not allowed to eat it, provided that the person who caught it and killed it was not in the state of ihram. Certain prohibitions relating to the haram area. Alright though? So, number one, hunting game. Hunting game. The animals that is within the haram area, you can't touch those animals. The free-ranging animals, you can't touch those animals. You can see the nicest of sheep there and the nicest of camels there, but if they are free-range, you can't touch them. Cutting or picking grass in Makkah, in the Makkah precincts and in the Haram area around it are forbidden to everyone. It is even forbidden to the people that stays in Makkah. This refers to wild grass, and wild plants. This does not refer to something that you yourself planted. You've got a piece of land there and you plant something there, you can plant it, you can take it out. But the things that grows freely, that you cannot touch. Even if you are from Makkah, you cannot touch it. Whether they are pilgrims in the state of Ihram or not. However, certain plants like the one called idhir, and the senna leaves, as well as dried plants and thorny plants are excluded from this rule. There's a few exceptions which is mentioned here. Now the idhir, Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when Nabi Sallam, when they were in Makkah, after the conquest of Makkah, so Nabi Sallam made this ruling that the trees and the plants in Makkah are prohibited. So Hazrat Ali asked, now all of them, so Nabi Sallam said yes. So Hazrat Ali said, but why not exclude the idhir? Because this was generally the wood that was used by the blacksmiths in order to make tools, and it was because for their fire, and it was also used by the people generally for purpose of cooking in those days, this particular tree. So then Nabi Sallallahu did not respond to him, and after some time wahy and revelation came to Nabi Sallallahu, and then Nabi Sallallahu said, okay fine, the idhir tree is exempted. And senna, the senna is because you allowed to take the leaves of the senna plant, because it is used for medicinal purposes. It is used for medicinal purposes. And then dried plants. For example, the plant is died. Dried plants here means the plant has died naturally. The plant has died. So we generally find a distinction between a plant that is alive and a plant that is dead. Now when the plant is died, one of the indications of it is that it is completely dried out. Now this, once the plant is died and completely dried out, then you are allowed to take it and use it. And some thorny plants, there's certain trees that were thorn bearing, so people couldn't really use it for anything besides firewood. And these kind of trees, they started becoming, abundant, and they were causing harm to the people, and it became problematic for the animals also. So these kinds of trees were then allowed to be cut down. But other than that, generally, you're not allowed to cut down any trees or remove any plants. So it is permissible to trim the trees or take other action for rehabilitative purposes. In other words, this tree is grown out of proportion, you can trim it. And then the branches that you cut off from it, you can utilize that. But the tree in itself should remain. The basic of the tree, it should remain. And then also what is meant by rehabilitative, the tree is growing somewhere, but where it is growing, there's no longer water available. And you're not able to bring water there regularly. You are allowed to uproot that tree and plant it somewhere else, but not allowed to remove it. So you can displace it from one area to another area, but you're not allowed to remove it in totality. It is also possible to pick or cut the crops planted by people. As I mentioned, if it is something that you plant yourself, then you can harvest that. And then fruits and branches of miswak tree can be plucked, and it is permissible to graze animals in the haram area. If the animals graze there and they eat from the leaves and the grass, then no problem. There's no problem. But as people, we are not allowed to cut it down or to uproot it. So things that are not forbidden to the pilgrim in the state of ihram. Certain things that are not prohibited. You can do these things, no problem to it. Number one is to take a bath. So if you find that, you've been now, you feel a bit tired, but sweaty, and you feel that, you're not smelling as fresh as when you put on the ihram, you can take a shower. However, when you went into the state of ihram in the first instance, You could cut your hair, you could trim your beard, you could put on oil, you could put on, the underarm, you could do all of that before going into the state of ihram. This is now whilst you are in the state of ihram. You can take a wash, but not with perfumed soap. It must be unscented soap. So it mustn't be something to which there is a fragrance added. If the soap is made and it has got a natural fragrance, then that is fine. But you can't have something with an added fragrance. You don't get rose fragrance soap. That means that a rose fragrance has been added to that soap. So you take something that is odorless or scentless, you understand? And the same with shampoo. You do find it, because there's a market for it with the Muslims, you do find unscented soap and unscented shampoo, and you can use that when taking a bath. However, you can't do any of the other things that you did when you initially into the ihram, like clipping your nails, etc. All those things prohibited. Then changing your ihram clothes and washing them. If for a long period of time and you know you've been covered with dust, you can get yourself another ihram. So when you take the shower, you put on a fresh ihram, and the other one you can wash. You can keep it. So brushing your teeth with miswak. Miswak is that stick that we use to clean our teeth. No problem in using that. Okay, then pulling off the broken nail or dilapidate and infected hair. It is reprehensible to scratch the head or body even if it does not cause plucking any hair. So this is a broken nail. You did some work, so the nail got torn. Now that nail can get stuck somewhere and it can cause harm to you. So the nail became torn, not by way of your action. You didn't go there to pull it, and then got it torn. If you did that, then that is a violation of the ihram. Something happened, you were busy working, etc. Then your nail got stuck somewhere and it got pulled. So now, instead of leaving that nail so that it can cause harm afterwards, you are then allowed to remove it. You are then allowed to remove it. And the same, as I say there, an infected hair, because you need to remove that hair, or sometimes you get an infected hair and it causes a swelling and it becomes pussy. So now if you leave it, you're going to remain in pain. So these removals of the hair and the nail here is out of necessity. It is not for the purpose of adornment. And therefore we are also discouraged from scratching the head unnecessarily. Because you scratch your head, what happens? You're actually removing hair. You scratch your skin too much, what happens? You're actually removing hair, and all of those will constitute violations of the state of ihram. So having a tooth pulled out, you're having toothache, you can have your tooth pulled out. The only thing is, I speak under correction, but I don't think they can use anesthetic when you have your teeth pulled when you are in a state of ihram. So the reg so. No, I'm just joking. I don't know who's going to have his teeth pulled without any anesthetic. No, you are allowed. So whatever is necessary and needed to have that tooth pulled, they put the anesthetic, etc. All of that is permissible and allowed with regards to having the tooth pulled. So, blood cupping, etc., hijama, it's all forms of bloodletting. Right? You can have all of that done as long as it does not result in the removal of hair. If it is going to result in the removal of hair, like normally with the head, one of the things is if a person suffers from headaches, then they can do cupping on the head. Now you get what they call dry cupping also. But if the cupping requires the removal of the hair, then that cupping is not allowed. Okay, so getting an injection or getting a person's wound, covered or wrapped, that is permissible in the state of ihram. Also wearing rings, watches, glasses, and gas masks, for example, under extreme circumstances. But wearing these things does not constitute a violation of the ihram. Wearing the money pouch, which is that ihram belt, even if it is stitched, it does not constitute a violation of the ihram. So the money belt that people wear and the ihram belt that people wear, that does not constitute a violation of the ihram. And then covering the body or something like a blanket without covering the face and the head. It's cold, for example, the ladies, it's cold, now they wear a shawl, no problem. Or the men, they wear the ihram, but then they wear something additional to it, no problem, as long as they over the shoulders without wearing it. So the jacket, if you put your arms through it, then it becomes a piece of clothing. But if you're just carrying it over your shoulders, but you're not putting your arms into it, no problem. Because then it is similar to taking a blanket or a shawl to just cover you. It's just something to cover you, but you're not. So there's a difference between using it to cover you and wearing it. You are wearing it once you put your arms into it. Then you are wearing it. But other than that, you're only using it to cover yourself. So using an umbrella or taking shade in a tent. You can use anything for shade as long as it is not attached to the head. And then hunting the aquatic animals like fish and slaughtering domestic animals. That was in our previous discussion with regards to what we may eat. And then killing animals which are not game, such as cows, hawks, and harmful animals, pests and insects such as snakes, scorpions, mice, flies, lice. Must be careful for the flies and the lice, because sometimes in the scratching and so on, you can do all of these things provided it does not amount to you committing a transgression of the requirements of the ihram. Alright, so for today, inshallah, we're going to stop there, inshallah. I don't know if there's any questions with regards to our discussion for today. No questions? Yeah. You see, it is very difficult for any scholar to give an opinion that would constitute a ruling on that. That is the kind of matter regarding which the ulama say, istafta qalbak. Because I can't give you a ruling that would put you in a condition where you could fall foul of the law. And then when you get arrested, because that is a possibility, because if they do catch you there, it's supposed to be, we haven't in recent years really, in the beginning when they introduced this, there were actually a group of South Africans that were arrested for it. And then their visas were cancelled and they were sent back to South Africa. But I think in the beginning they did this as an indication to show people the seriousness of it. But now in recent years, I mean, I even saw a person making tawaf around the Kaaba. You can see his kurta. He's just got the ihram around it. You understand? So at the end of the day, this is a matter where istafta qalbak. You have to ask your own heart. If you feel comfortable doing so, then fabiha wa ni'ma, but you must be aware of the risks. And if you don't feel comfortable with it, fabiha wa ni'ma. You understand? They'll call it a false ihram. You understand? But for me, I don't say yes or no either way. If the person feels comfortable with it, then no problem. No problem. And I think the authorities there, to a large extent, actually knows it's happening also. But I think as long as it's not disproportionate, man, in the sense that the amount of people now on the mataf is such that, you know, there's too many for the mataf. Because you see the mataf is full, but you'll see all the other floors are also full. You understand? So which means that the percentage of people that actually does that is very minimal. It's actually very minimal. But it does happen. And if you want to be one of those people, it's entirely up to you. You know, because every person must take the responsibility for his own actions. So if you do it, alhamdulillah, and there's no consequences, alhamdulillah. If you get caught and something happens and you are ready for that also, alhamdulillah. Yeah, they do all of that. As I said, they wear the underwear, they wear the kufiya. Actually, so that if anything happens on the mataf or in the sa'i and they pass away, then that will be an indication that they weren't actually in haram and that they require the full rituals of janazah. You understand? So it depends on the individual. Depends on the individual. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. That's okay. That's okay because that doesn't cover the entire. You see, if the strap goes around, it doesn't cover the entire heel or the entire ankle. And you will find that many people, they find it very difficult to walk with the normal sandals without the strap. My father's one of them. When he went for Hajj, he needs that support of the strap around the heel. You understand? So you will find that strap, it doesn't cover the entire ankle. Understand? So there's no problem with that. No problem with that. And even if a person wears for medical purposes, if the person can't wear those for whatever medical reason it is, and he wears a normal shoe, then that is also, but provided the medical condition is there to justify it. But the strap in itself, no problem. Any other questions? Yeah, the miqat, yes. Muqimin, you're like muqimin. So you actually start your ihram from wherever you are in Makkah. No, not for Hajj. If you want to do Umrah, it's different. Normally for Umrah, then you go to because the time difference is also but shorter. Then the people will go to Masjied Aisha, or they can even go to Arafah. In other words, they go out of the hill. They go out of the haram into the hill and come back in. But if you are coming for Hajj, then Makkah itself becomes the place from where you don your ihram. And that is why wherever you are in Makkah, you go from there with your ihram, you go to Mina. There's not a problem. Masjid Aisha. Tan'im. Oh, Azizia, yes. No, Azizia is part of Makkah. Azizia is part of Makkah. In fact, you see, Azizia is almost like Bonteheuwel is part of Cape Town. It's a suburb. Azizia is actually just a suburb of Makkah. Azizia is part of Makkah. When you in Azizia, then on there's that mountain range. On the other side of that mountain range is Mina. That is outside of Makkah. And then you go to Arafah. Arafah is outside of Makkah. It's outside of the hill. Outside of the haram. The haram is part of the hill. But Azizia itself is part of Makkah. Any other questions? No other questions? خير جزاكم الله سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون